guys, I'm Carly from Belle's Books, and today I am going to talk to you about all the books that I read in May and June, because I'm very tardy with my wrap-ups. So I looked at my Goodreads, and I think that's a total of 8 books I read in May and June. So I'm going to start with Jen Campbell's The Girl Aquarium, which is a poetry collection. Now, this is Jen's first full-length poetry collection. These poems riff on themes of girlhood, queerness, bodily difference, and she does it through themes like the circus and the freak show. Katie is here with me, and I've just started talking. She wants to get involved. You alright, Katie? She's looking at me. I don't know what she wants. Probably her meats. Anyway, Katie, let's talk about this poetry collection. It looks at society's expectations of gender and body and performativity, particularly when it comes to girls and women. Do you want to sit up here? She's very cuddly. These poems, I love them. They were, for me, this was an accessible collection, but it was also slightly challenging. So, not in a bad way at all. They're beautifully written. I love all of them. The thing I've always found difficult with poetry is that I felt like, I don't know what this is about. I don't know what this author is saying. So, I felt like I was missing something. Shh, stop it. I felt like I was missing something, and I felt like it was going over my head. But I think that was more to do with an idea I had of what poetry is, and that I felt like I just didn't get it. When I relinquished the idea that I had to understand the author's intention, and I just read poetry with my own eyes, and I read it and thought, what do I get out of this? What am I taking from this poem? Now I'm totally cool with it. And I love it a whole lot more because I can read a poem and take something away from it that obviously the author didn't mean, but poetry is subjective, so it relates to what I'm feeling at the time and what experiences I have. Katie has just flopped on my hula hoop. Katie! She's being super cute. Yeah, so I loved it, and I put a few poems that I really loved. So a few of my favourites were Concerning the Principles of Human Knowledge, Hello Dark, which is heartbreaking, actually made me cry. The title poem Girl Aquarium, which brings up this beautiful imagery of these strange girls swimming around an aquarium and people looking at them. And The Angel of the North as well, which there's quite a few poems set in the north of England, which is where Jen is from. They're the only ones that I struggled with because there are a few in dialect. I know what the north of England dialect sounds like, but I found it difficult to read. So I imagined that my friend Jasmine was reading to them, because I know her voice and her accent so well. I just imagined Jasmine was reading them to me because she is from the same place that Jen is from. And then I kind of fell into the rhythm of the poem. I'm going to link down below some poems that Jen has read. They're available on, I think it's her channel and on the Waterstones channel. So I always find it really helpful to listen to poets read their own work. So I'm going to link those down below. Do check them out. It's a beautiful collection. I would definitely recommend it. If you could see Katie, she's having the best time. She's got her whole belly out. Next, I read Circe by Madeline Miller. I read this for my book club and also wanted to read it because it was on the Women's Prize shortlist. I absolutely loved this book. I think I gave it 5 stars. It tells the story of Circe, who is a minor character, The Odyssey by Homer. So Madeline Miller turns it on its head and she makes Circe the main character, and she takes the episode where Odysseus comes to her island and she makes that a minor kind of bit part in Circe's life, Really like the character development of this, where Cersei starts off as like a meek and mild nymph. She is the daughter of the sun god Helios, and she discovers her powerful witchcraft, and she learns that craft, and she works at it until she becomes a super powerful badass bitch witch. And yeah, it's about her life on this island that she's exiled to, her experiences. Odysseus rocks up, she has a baby, and it's about motherhood, learning from your experiences. It's also a commentary on how women are expected to perform around men, how women have to preempt and anticipate violence from men, and when we don't, the consequences of that. So I love the fact that it was a feminist take on the problems that we have and the things we have to encounter, particularly gender-based violence. And it was just had this whole host of episodes from Greek myth where Madeline Miller takes us through those episodes that we know about. So there was things, I mean, I don't know that much about Greek myth, but there was things that I recognised. So like the character of the Minotaur, that comes up, and you hear about the story of Cersei's sister giving birth to the Minotaur, which is a scene that made me go, but so good. And yeah, I really love this book. I would definitely recommend this. If you haven't read it already, where have you been, man? Next, I read another poetry collection, No Matter the Wreckage by Sarah Kay. Another beautiful poetry collection. This is one of my favourites now. These poems talk about life, family, friendships, relationships, experiences. They touch on the mundane aspect of life, but also the fragility, and they just celebrate life in all of its bizarre glory, from the day-to-day nonsense to the extreme highs and lows. They're super accessible. I love reading them, but they're so beautifully written. And I did start marking up my copy. Again, I've talked about this before. I will link down below a few videos of Sarah reading her own poetry, because she's a performance poet and she's just amazing to watch anyway. But when there were particular poems I loved, put little hearts by that. I love this one. What was the other? I love this. It's just a great poetry collection. I would definitely recommend it, particularly if you are a bit nervous of poetry, because it's super accessible, and I just think everyone will definitely love it. I listened to a few books on audio in May and June, which I love as a way of consuming books, because it means I can listen to books when I'm in the car on my way to work. So let me look at my Goodreads, because I can't remember what they were. So the first one I listened to was Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. I really love this story. It's set in 1863, and it is about Bridie Devine, who is a female investigator in the dirty streets of London. She's taken on this new case of a missing child, Christabel Berwick, but there's something odd about this child, and the story kind of drip feeds you through why this child is so strange. She's been kidnapped, so you follow her kidnappers and her, as well as Bridie, who's trying to find her. Bridie is accompanied by a heavily tattooed ghost, which is just strange and also amazing. There's a lot of folklore in here about mermaids, which I love, and it's set in Victorian London, which is another time period I love. So it's a 5-star book for me. My only problem was, because I was listening to it on audio, I found it quite difficult to follow when I had to concentrate driving. So there were a few episodes where I was like, what just happened? It sounded beautifully written, so I think it's one of those books that I want to go back and actually read the physical copy of, because there were just some beautiful sentences that made me go, oh, that's really nice. So yes, definitely want to read that one again in physical form. Would definitely recommend it. It's a super fun tale with kind of lots of little twists and turns, and really loved it. Sounds like Dan is home. Hello!
Hello.
Hi! Dan's home. I'm back in the room with a cup of tea. Okay, so the next book I read was Ordinary People by Diana Evans. I don't have it with me because it was a library copy and I've taken it back. Now, this was a 3-star read for me. I didn't get on with the writing style. I found it too overdone, and just the sentences just went on and on, and there was so much detail that I felt it was unnecessary. But I've heard other people speak about it as in, obviously that was intentional because it was trying to represent the mundanity of the lives of the main characters. So the story is about 2 couples, Michael and Melissa, and Stephanie and Damien, whose relationships are flagging. They've become tired, and it's about everyday life being really difficult when you fall out of love with the person you're in a relationship with. I appreciated what the novel was doing. I appreciated the exploration of how relationships fail and what happens to families in that instance. It did totally put me off having children for life, though. My God, it was just... I just put it down, like, I never want to have kids now because it just ruins everything. But yeah, and there was a parallel narrative of the destruction of the Crystal Palace in London. The book is very London centric, so if you know London, then it's kind of nice when you read about things that you know about. I didn't particularly know this area of London very well. It didn't make it a problem for me, but I just kind of felt like I didn't connect with the book as much. Also, it's very, very heavily linked to music, particularly John Legend's album Normal People by the same title. Again, I mean, John Legend's alright. I'll listen to it if it's on the radio, but I'm not a massive fan, so I don't know, I just felt like I didn't connect with this book very well, and it was an okay read. Like, it was shortlisted for the Women's Prize for fiction, so I wanted to work my way through that shortlist, which is why I read it. Had some interesting things to say, but yeah, not a top read for me. Now, in contrast to that, I finished The Heart's Invisible Furies by John Boyne, which you will know I've been reading for a while because it's a big fat book. Taken that back to the library now, 700 pages, but it was worth every single page. I only picked it up because Lauren from Lauren and the Books recommended it, and I fell in love with it as much as she did. Really loved it. It's the story of Cyril Avery, so it's the story of his life. You come into the narrative before he's born, so you meet his mother when she is pregnant with him. You learn how she is kicked out of her family home and village in Ireland because she's 16 and pregnant, and of course it's her fault. Then she goes to Dublin and has the baby there, and then the book is told in episodes of every 7 years. So every 7 years you come back and meet Cyril and you learn about his life, and it's so well done. I loved it so much. It was both really funny. There were lines that made me do my, Dan calls it my Mrs. Crabapple laugh, because I just go ha when I find something really funny. Really funny, but then other episodes where I was like this because it was just so heartbreaking. It tells of the experiences of this guy, and he is... I thought that was Dan coming in. He is gay and suffering from the experiences of being a gay man in a very backward 1950s onward Ireland. So yeah, he has a lot to deal with, and it's super sad, but it sees it right through to the end, and I kind of felt very bereft when I finished it. I didn't want it to end, but I raced through the last 300 pages because I was just loving it so much. I feel like it's a book that everybody should read because it just tells of an experience that I feel everybody should know, the adversity that you have to come up against when you don't fit into the normal society of being straight. And yeah, it was just heartbreaking, but definitely worth a go. Please read it. Next, I listened to another audiobook, but I listened to Public Library by Ali Smith. I do have a physical copy of this because, as I may have mentioned, I am slightly obsessed with Ali Smith's work. This one, like all of my Ali Smith books, is signed. Ooh! I went to see her at the Cambridge Literary Festival, where I've been to see her many times, and she probably now thinks I'm a stalker because she did recognise me last time. This book it's like a love letter to public libraries, books and stories. So it's a collection of short stories, but it's interspersed by by comments and love letters from other people to libraries, talking about how important public libraries are and how important books are to the shaping of people. So I think she talks to a lot of her author friends, and they all give episodes of what libraries mean to them and how important they are, and how their experience of using a public library shaped them and turned them into the readers and writers that they are today. These stories, as with Ali Smith's work, are all slightly odd. They're not plot driven, they're more about experience. And these stories are about language and our relationship to it, how it changes over time, how we mould it, and the effect it has on us. Ali Smith often deals with dead characters, so there's a story where she talks to her father even though he's passed away. There's a story where the character walks through the park and encounters Catherine Mansfield, Virginia Woolf. There's a story of D.H. Lawrence's Ashes, and it talks about how as a human race we are indebted to language and words and books. So if you haven't read it already, please check it out. It's one of my favourites, and it talks about how important public libraries are, so definitely give it a go. The last book I read in June was Lanny by Max Porter. I consumed this on audio again, another one that I really want to read the physical copy of, so I would like to get my hands on a copy of it because it is beautiful. I read Grief is a Thing with Feathers back at the beginning of the year and I loved it. I love Max's style. It's quite experimental. It intertwines narratives and it just does something incredibly innovative. So Lanny is the story of Lanny told from several different perspectives. You hear from his mother, his father, a friend Pete who is an artist and who teaches him art, and also my favourite part was the narrative of Dead Papa Toothwort, which I think is a form of the Green Man. Now I love anything to do with fairies, the Fae, the Green Man, and I just found it such an incredible narrative, the way that this character was kind of grouchy and old. He's as old as time, he's seen everything, he knows everything, and he thrives on listening to people. So he goes into the village where Lanny lives and he listens to all the conversations. So a lot of his narrative is told in snippets of conversation, and it's conversation you'll hear when you walk past people, when people have in their homes, when they're down the pub. So some of it's really funny, some of it's quite dark, and we hear about Lanny in the first half of the book, his interactions with his parents. His parents' narrative talk about their relationship with Lanny. They both find him quite a strange child. There's something ethereal about him. He has got quite a fey nature, which is probably why Dead Papa Toothwort is drawn to him. And then he goes missing, and then it tells the story of what happens when he goes missing. It talks a lot about our morbid culture of rubbernecking, the way that when something happens that's tragic, like a child going missing, the way that people react to it in not a favourable way, the way that everyone kind of says nasty things about the parents, and thinks the worst, and it makes you feel really invested in Lanny and what's happened to him. And I was kind of on edge reading that, and I was like, what's happened? Where's he gone? Oh God. It's just so good. I don't know how quite to explain it properly. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but I love the way it was told. I love the interspersing narratives, and I just want to read a whole book from Dead Papa Toothwort because he was my absolute favourite. Also, it made me want to read more about the Green Man, and I've got quite a lot of books on fairies, and I have got one called Uprooted, on the trail of the Green Man, so I really want to get to that pretty soon. So yeah, it made me want to get back into all my fairy books. I can't praise it enough. It's a 5-star read. I just want everyone to read it. It's so good. So please do check it out. Now, they're all the books that I read in May and June. I'm gonna do a little book haul soon. I haven't got that many because I'm not allowed to spend money now on books. Not at all. So I don't have much of a haul, but I want to do a few videos on TBRs, like my upcoming TBRs. I've got a buddy read planned in September with Emma from Cup of Books, and yeah, there's a few books that I really want to get to, so I will be talking to you about those very soon. Hopefully I'll have the lighting sorted out soon as well, so I don't have to sit on the floor, which is, it's been fine down here, sitting amongst all my books and Raven there on my shoulder. And yeah, and hopefully Katie will join me again, but won't be so distracting next time. So I will see you all in my next video.